And in the hot face of war, in exchange for NATO membership, betrayal of our people, or the only way to stop the fighting. I'm Maria Drutska, and today we will break down the latest major statements about the war in Ukraine and beyond. A ceasefire agreement with Russia could be reached if Ukraine's non-occupied territories come under NATO's protective umbrella. This assumption was voiced by President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky in an interview with Sky News. According to the president, this would allow negotiations for the return of the remaining territories to take place later through diplomatic means. At the same time, the president emphasized that the invitation to NATO must include all internationally recognized borders of Ukraine. What does this mean? It means the very invitation to NATO must cover all of Ukraine, including its occupied territories, as recognized internationally. If NATO offers membership only for the territories currently controlled by Ukraine, it would signal to Russia that the occupied regions are no longer legally considered Ukrainian, a concession Ukraine cannot afford to make. Zelensky also noted that a ceasefire is necessary to guarantee that Putin doesn't come back to seize more Ukrainian territories. If we want to stop the hot phase of the war, we need to place the territories we control under NATO's umbrella, the president said. Many people wonder why Ukraine cannot follow Germany's path. This has been explored by European Pravda publication. The example most often cited for partial NATO coverage of a member state's territory is the Federal Republic of Germany during the period between its accession to NATO in 1955 and its reunification with the German Democratic Republic in 1990. However, this is a complicated case shaped by the unique security guarantees, political realities, and geopolitical landscape of the Cold War. The FRG joined NATO in May 1955 as a part of West's broader strategy to contain Soviet influence in Europe. Article 5 of the Washington Treaty, an attack on one is an attack on all, applied only to the territory controlled by the FRG. Any military action by the USSR in the GDR would not have triggered Article 5. The FRG wasn't a regular NATO member, it became the de facto eastern outpost of the border of the social bloc. This involved a significant allied military presence, primarily from the United States, and the deployment of the US nuclear weapons starting in the 1960s under NATO's nuclear sharing policy. There are similarities. Ukraine, like Germany, does not control part of its territory and would serve as NATO's eastern outpost if admitted. But there are far more differences. Unlike Ukraine, the FRG never planned to militarily liberate its eastern territories. The FRG did not face the dilemma of choosing between security guarantees and territorial integrity. NATO in 1955 and NATO in 2024 are two different, entirely different alliances, despite comparable and perhaps even greater global security threats today. NATO, in its early years, operated under the logic of the Cold War, focused on enemy containment and expansion to achieve that goal. Modern NATO leans toward de-escalation and risk avoidance, particularly in the context of admitting Ukraine. While no one is formally demanding Ukraine renounce its occupied territories, a de facto temporary concession might become a prerequisite for joining NATO. President Zelensky emphasized repeatedly that territorial integrity cannot be compromised, but the particularities of integrating Ukraine into NATO while parts of its territory remains occupied present a complex challenge. This scenario echoes earlier suggestion about resolving the conflict by bringing Ukraine's controlled territories under NATO protection while addressing the occupied regions later. Well, before I continue, I want to thank all of you who sent coffee on Buy Me a Coffee and become patrons. Please do so if you want more videos on the channel. You can also help this channel by subscribing to it and like this video, as it will definitely help Ukrainian content to be seen by more people. I suggest you also subscribe to my X page and Blue Sky, where I post regular updates about the situation in Ukraine, and to my Instagram, where I show the daily life in Ukraine. However, the parallels with the German case show that Ukraine's past is far more complex due to the modern geopolitical realities and the ongoing aggression. One thing is clear: NATO's decisions in this matter will not only shape the future of Ukraine, but also redefine the geopolitical landscape for decades to come. Strategic compromises may be necessary, but they must not come at the expense of Ukraine's sovereignty or the will of its people to defend their homeland. Ukraine's deep integration into NATO's military structure, given the political context and geographic realities, would undoubtedly come with strings attached. Any special operations, sabotage, or hybrid actions against Russia after a ceasefire will likely labeled as a NATO aggression, giving Russia a convenient excuse for more escalation. Because, of course, nothing scares Moscow more than the idea of Ukraine defending itself. These limitations from the allies and the US would definitely keep things less interesting. Still, let's face it, joining NATO is Ukraine's strategic priority, and there is no real alternative to the security guarantees the alliance offers. The only thing standing in the way, NATO's political will, mainly the US, though Germany, Hungary, and Slovakia will undoubtedly try to complicate things. But let's be honest, the US likely has enough leverage to bring these roadblocks in line. In my humble opinion, NATO membership is probably the only reliable way to stop the active phase of the war. Ukraine doesn't need vague promises or pretty speeches about support. We need guarantees, real ones, not like hopes, not intentions, not statements. We need something solid, and these guarantees could come through bilateral agreements with key partners like the UK, France, or US, though China offering a deal would certainly spice things up. But let's be real, the best option is NATO's security umbrella, because without it, well, let's start the countdown for the Baltics or Poland, because Putin does not do boundaries. He will be back, and this time with even bigger appetite. Let's talk about Trump. His potential national security advisor, Mike Waltz, is reportedly reviewing several proposals to end Russia's war in Ukraine. Among them is a suggestion from General Keith Kellogg, who Trump has just appointed as his special representative for Ukraine. According to CNN, Trump's team is cooking up a plan to push for a quick ceasefire to freeze the war. Meanwhile, negotiations can drag on indefinitely, because that always works so well with Russia. Naturally, Trump's administration will also insist that Europe and NATO take on the lion's share on the financial burden for Ukraine. Translation: we will help, but only if someone else pays. Kellogg's grand plan reportedly makes US military aid to Ukraine conditional on Kyiv participating in peace talks with Russia. Oh, and here is the cherry on the top: Ukraine's NATO aspirations would be postponed indefinitely. And another idea, let's Russia keep the territory currently occupied and in exchange maybe Ukraine can join NATO. But even Trump's inner circle isn't thrilled about inviting Ukraine into NATO anytime soon. But hey, let's not get ahead of ourselves. CNN sources say that it's still too early to predict what Trump's strategy will be. They have no clue yet. And here is a fun twist. Trump has reportedly been calling Viktor Orban for advice on the war. Yes, the same Viktor Orban who's best buddies with Putin. Apparently, Trump values his insights on ending the war in Ukraine. I mean, what could possibly go wrong with taking advice from a guy who thinks Ukraine's Carpathians are historically Hungarian? But hey, whatever Orban told him, I don't want to imagine. President Zelensky's comment about diplomatically reclaiming occupied territories, joining NATO with the regions we currently control, and leaving Crimea for future negotiations were clearly aimed at an international audience. And let's be honest, his primary target was Trump. That said, Trump doesn't take office tomorrow, and a lot can happen on the battlefield over the next 2 months. For now, we are seeing Russians dying in droves, yet somehow still managing to push forward in eastern part of Ukraine. Classic Russian strategy: throw bodies at the problem until it looks like a progress. The presence of foreign troops in Ukraine cannot be ruled out, and Europe may play a role in this. This statement came from the new High Representative of the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Kaja Kallas, during an interview with ANSA. By the way, she was in Kiev today. According to Kallas, the war in Ukraine holds exceptional importance for the EU. This is the most serious security crisis. I believe nothing should be excluded, and we must maintain a degree of strategic ambiguity, Kallas reported when asked if European soldiers could play a role in Ukraine, specifically in establishing a ceasefire. Well, to be honest, I don't see this happening anytime soon, as there's no consensus among European nations. This is the first. Macron made some statement about this a while ago, but it didn't gain traction with other European countries. Still, someone has to start this conversation, right? However, at the moment, it seems unlikely. Russian support for nuclear weapons use against Ukraine at a record high. In an alarming trend, 39% of Russian citizens now consider the use of nuclear weapons against Ukraine acceptable, according to a survey by Russia's Levada Center. For comparison, this figure was 34 in July and 29 in April 2023. Among those surveyed, 11% confidently support a nuclear strike on Ukraine, while 28% believe such a move is likely justifiable. This marks a record high since the start of the full-scale war. The share of opponents to the use of nuclear weapons has dropped to 45% from 52% in July. In April 2023, 56% of respondents held such views. Currently, only 21% categorically oppose such a scenario, while 24% doubt that a nuclear strike on Ukraine could be justified. Meanwhile, 15% remain undecided. Alexei Levinsov, head of social cultural research at the Levada Center, described the findings as deeply concerning. He blames the frightening discourse about the possibility of nuclear weapon use perpetuated by Russian leadership. These discussions gradually increase the share of those who consider it acceptable and even morally justified. Levinson believes propaganda is playing a key role in this shift, presenting a potential nuclear strike on Ukraine as a demonstration of Russia's strength and a way to quickly end the war while downplaying the catastrophic consequences. As a result, the population's fear of using such weapons is decreasing, and the why not attitude is now near 40%. That's it for today, and I want to thank all of you for supporting Ukraine, watching Ukrainian content. Please like this video, and if you really like it, you want more videos, you can support the channel's development on Patreon or buy me a coffee. See you soon, and Slava Ukraini!